Hey, I'm Sheena Shuey. I'm a registered social worker and host of the 4Q podcast. I'm passionate about normalising, not pathologising life, and that's not easy. So each episode, I have amazing guests on to share the messy, beautiful ups and downs of life in 4 key questions with tips and tricks along the way. There are moments in life where you can embrace your story and understand that it's okay not to feel okay sometimes. So let's get into it. This is the 4Q podcast. Today's episode is a unique one because we are doing the 4 questions in a different format. So some of you may not know, but I do have a relationship course, a self-paced course on the website with a bunch of activities that you would be doing in relationship coaching or counselling. I created that course because one of the most difficult things to get going is couples counselling among couples, because not only are you working with one person's schedule, you're working with 2, and generally there's one leading it and one resisting it. So, not to be stereotyping, but a very common example that I've seen is that maybe the woman wants to come, but the man's sort of like, we're fine, we don't need it, we're not that bad. And there's this sort of misconception that things have to be bad to see a therapist. And it's kind of like, do you wait till you're obese to see a PT, a personal trainer, or do you sort of do things sort of when you need to, or just to work on things? Like, perhaps you just want to fix your form, like you want to get things really perfect so that you're doing things correctly. So I've got this relationship course, as I've mentioned. And so today we're going to explore the 4 pillars of a strong foundation in a relationship. So the 4 key pillars of a strong foundation to your relationship, and this is any relationship, whether you're sort of newer together, maybe you've been together for a year or 2, whether you're engaged, married for 1 year, married for 5 years, married for 10, 20 years, you have to be having these conversations around these 4 areas. So today's podcast, the 4 questions aren't going to be the 4R formula, they're going to be the 4C formula, which is cause, cares, communication, and consummation. So let's jump into the first C, which is cause. Cause, which is CORES, is around what are your values and your purpose? What is the bigger sort of thing that you're working towards? What is your sort of grounding force in you? And this is a really good exercise because not only as a couple do you figure out what you're about, but you figure this out individually as well. What am I standing for? What's important to me? So cause is really about your values in action as a couple. So, it's about figuring out our individual values, our individual purpose, and how can we combine both of those so that our relationship has a purpose. And eventually for couples who end up having families, I love to do this as a family too, because then it becomes a activity around what does our family stand for? What is our purpose? What are we doing all of this for? So that is the core. It's the core of the foundation is really about who I am, who we are, and what kind of people do we want to be in the world? What do we want to be remembered as? So cares, CARES, is around, okay, now so we talked about cause, which are our intrinsic goals, our intrinsic values, but what about our extrinsic things? Because it's important to have balance between, abstract values and also, it's important to set goals. So cares is really about your individual goals and then your relationship goals, because so often I will see couples have their own ideas of goals but not talk about it. And sometimes the seasons of relationships are perhaps there's a year or two where you're focusing on your partner's career or their business or whatever, and the other partner sort of sacrificing their career or their promotions or whatever it is. And then you swap. If you're on the same page about what we're doing and what the bigger goal is, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's sort of that, okay, I'm sacrificing now with the anticipation of perhaps in the future. Or if you recognize that one partner is sacrificing things at the moment, I realize that you're sacrificing in this area, so how can I support you in other areas or whatever it may be? So cares is really about getting on the same page of like, what are we working towards, and talking about goals. Because again, it could even be things like having a child. Maybe one person sees having a child in a year or two, whereas the other partner sees having a child in 5 years. Maybe it's around how many children. It can even be even broader than that, like what kind of work raising children balance do we have? What kind of schools do we want? And I know that sounds a bit full on to think about, but it's important to think about these things so that you avoid future conflicts and future sort of value clashes. So we've covered the 2 C's so far, cause and cares. Then the 3rd C is around communication, which obviously it speaks to itself. I think every relationship guru, everyone who knows anything about relationships will talk about communication. Now, communication covers, for me, a lot of the verbal communication, a lot of verbal strategies. And so when you do the course, I give you some, and then we can build on those later in one-on-one coaching or whatever. But some really basic things are just around, how do I communicate my needs? And one of the biggest mistakes I see with couples is not directly communicating their needs. So they might give the silent treatment, or they might drop hints at what they want, but they don't actually say directly what they want. Like, I'll give you an example. Maybe one partner's feeling like they haven't spent much time with the other one, or they'd like to go on a date or something like that, and the other partner hasn't picked up on that. And so they might go, I'd really love to go and do this, or when was our last date together? So they're asking questions around the topic, but they're not actually asking or saying, hey, we haven't gone on a date in a while. Can we go on a date? I think that would be important. So you can see that there's that indirect. And I think in Australia, compared to countries such as in Europe and that kind of thing, we tend to be very indirect sometimes, and we don't know how to handle directness. But it's very crucial that we sort of don't pussyfoot around, because then you're not articulating your needs, and then that can breed like resentment, because you go, they haven't met my needs. And it's like, well, did you even articulate what your needs are? So communication, it can be looked at it so many ways. Like, I often talk about the love languages in anything, in my courses, in my parenting and everything. Love languages is one way. There's certain tweaks you can do in your communication styles. It's asking yourself if you're direct or indirect. So looking at your communication as a couple, I think, is really important. The 4th thing is consummation. So this is all about intimacy and sex. This is a really important part of your relationship, and it shouldn't be downplayed. Even if you do have kids, even if you do have a work life, intimacy is so vital, and sex is so vital. And I often talk about in this area too, all the non-verbal communication that happens too, and what we want in the bedroom, and sort of being, again, direct about what we want in the bedroom, what I like, what I don't like, what turns me on, what doesn't, what non-sexual activities turn me on. The amount of women who like chore play, which is foreplay because their husband's done the chores, it's like, what turns me on, and articulating that and being, again, really, really clear. And then if there are intimacy issues, there's certain sex challenges or intimacy challenges that you can do to bring that back. Because if there's one way, if you have lost the spark, the quickest way to bring the spark back is to do some sexual challenges, like above all the communication, above everything, because that's the stuff that gets your adrenaline going and your heart pumping. And it's the novelty stuff, because that is the stuff that makes you fall in love. When you first fall in love with someone, it's the heart racing, adrenaline rushing stuff that causes your brain to like chase this person and go, oh my God, I've got the butterflies. And sex can really do that more than just talking things out. So if you want a really easy tool to cover this, in my free resource library on the website, or for those who are part of my membership now, Wild Ocean Co membership, there's also what we call the foundation check for relationships. So it's the Heart and Soul Reset Foundation Check. And it's just a tool that you can use once a month to cover these 4 areas. So it's like you make a little date, you set aside like whether it's half an hour or an hour, get some wine, get some cheese, maybe have some dessert, and just talk about like rate each area out of 10 individually, and then say, okay, this month I feel like our communication was 3 out of 10, and the other partner might say, oh, I thought it was 8. Like I didn't realize it was not going so great. Same with, consummation. One partner might rate it 8 out of 10. The other might rate it 4 out of 10. So it's basically an activity that you do once a month. You rate each of the areas out of 10. You talk about why you've rated it out of 10. And then you talk about, okay, how can we move it higher? Or what do we need from each other to improve each area? The cause, the cares, the communication, and the consummation. It's super simple, super quick, but I guarantee if you did that for 6 months, 3 months, even 2 months, the amount that you will feel more connected and the spark that you will have with your partner will be so much stronger if you make a point of doing that on a regular basis. So I hope that was helpful. I hope this was an interesting episode for you. For anyone out there wondering, yes, my 4C formula is copyrighted, trademarked, etc. So please don't be trying to steal my content, because I will come after you. There's so many stealers out these days. But also, if you want to go a bit deeper, again, my Heart and Soul Reset is on the website. It's an online course. It's completely self-paced, so you can do it, bang it out in a weekend, or you could do one activity here and there. Do it however you want, but it's just such a great way to make the foundation solid, because again, it's all the activities you'd be doing one-on-one. So I hope this is helpful. If you love this episode, let me know. Connect on Instagram, send me a message, share it with friends, share this podcast with friends. I'd love for you to share that. And of course, keep your eye out for when the next round of our membership opens. All right, thanks for tuning in. I will see you next week, and take care of yourself and enjoy the 4Q podcast. See you later.